Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2026 Meet the Candidates Forum. I appreciate everybody coming out and everybody joining us on live stream. First off, I want to give a thank you to my committee. So first of all, my name is Caleb Breon. I'm the chairman of the Republican Central Committee, and then my vice chairwoman is Sam Rogers, running the live stream, and our secretary is Dennis Kazee, and then not able to join us tonight is our treasurer, Sarah Corman. So, if you guys get a chance tonight, please thank them for the work they put into this. Secondly, I want to thank our candidates for coming out to this. We appreciate you guys being willing to come out and put yourselves in front of everybody. It's not always the funnest. Probably come sit and get judged and ask a lot of tough questions, but that's also what you signed up for. So we're going to start with our local race first, which will be Commissioner District 1. And we're going to start with our challenger, which will be Terry Gottschalk. So candidates, we're going to stick to roughly 3 to 5 minutes. And then after the people in your race is finished, we're going to allow for audience Q&A. Work for everybody? Okay. Sounds good. So first up, we'll have Terry Gottschalk. I'll allow him to introduce himself, and we'll get this going.
Well, I guess he told you, I'm Terry Gottschalk from Logan. I've been encouraged to run for commissioner for a lot of years. I think ever since Bob Quantz retired, I kept saying no because I'm not a public person, I'm not a politician, but I just got to the point where I think it's time for it to change, something different. The way we can't keep going the way we think we are. I was born and raised in a little town of Shankston, south of Hayes. I've been up here 56 years. Met my wife from Logan, been married 52 years, had 3 kids, 11 grandkids, and 1 great-grandkid. So we're very blessed to have them all close to Phillips County and proud to live here and call this home. I've been a farmer, cattleman all my life, had a successful fencing business, well drilling business. My wife and I have owned a hometown grocery market for 13 years, and I've been on the Rural Fire Board president of the Rural Fire Board for 44 years. So I've been involved, and I want to keep being involved. And I'm like a lot of people, they complain about the taxes and going higher and higher, but nobody does anything. And I finally decided, if somebody doesn't try to do something different, it's just going to keep going the way it is and get worse. So I threw my hat in the ring. I think spending has got totally out of hand, and not enough money to pay good help or to fix the roads. There's too much money spent on interest and machinery that we don't have enough people to run right now, and I just don't think, that's good. We need to pay our employees better so we can have better employees instead of stay and do a good job. Right now they keep getting short-handed, quitting because they go to compete with Amber Wave, Tamco, the prisons. It's tough, but I think with proper management, better management of the monies and management of time, I see so much time wasted, not being managed right. But I think if we improve on that, you could keep the money to pay the help more money that we need instead of raising taxes. I guess that's about it. Like I said, I'm not a public speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And up next, we will have our current county commissioner for District 1, Doug Zillinger.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out this evening. I think it's very important that you come and listen and find out what's going on in your county. I'm Doug Zillinger. I am also from Logan. I've been a commissioner for 1 term, and it's been a very educational situation. I will tell you this, that the reason I started was because I wanted roads. I wanted a place that I could drive to and from my place without rattling my vehicles apart. I got into that first meeting and started listening and started watching, and I found out right away there's a whole lot more to this deal than roads. And the one that caught my attention was the landfill. The landfill had issues dating back 20 years that had not been addressed. And then the next thing that happened was our supervisor for that department quit, and it just started all out through that deal. And through it, by the end of the summer, we were able to get Danette to step in there and take that over, and went out there working with the regulators and figuring out our direction to start solving problems. And she currently has a dirt workforce out there, Chahoya and Company, and they are addressing one of the first problems. They're putting a cap on the cell that has the pollution on it, and that, we hope, will end that situation to where we don't have to worry about that anymore. They are also finishing digging out cell 5, and that dirt from cell 5 is being used to create a seal or a liner on the bottom of cell 5, as well as to create the cap over on cell 3. So a lot of hard work being done there, and getting those kinds of things taken care of. Believe me, there are no quick fixes in this county. You might think we can do that, but it won't work. You've got to have a long-term vision. You've got to put pieces in place so that you move forward with a unified and thoughtful process. I'm very proud of the fact that we developed a team of people that work in our different portions of the county. Our supervisors are key to making that happen, and then the next thing those people have to do is go back and work with their helpers and get things done that need to be done within their particular area. I've also worked with neighboring counties and with our state organizations to stay informed on different activities that are coming along that we need to be a part of. Terry's right. Taxes are high, wages are low, and that is not a good deal. It's just, we've got to do something about that, but I'm going to tell you this. I was visiting with a gentleman the other day. He took a look at what we were doing with our budget, and he said, you guys are not cutting fat, you're cutting meat. And if we are cutting out the money that we need to make things happen, then we are going to go into nothing but a downhill spiral, which is why I went with stabilization of our budget, which means our county currently is not collecting any more taxes than it did last year. And we've done that 2 years in a row. The hope is to do it again this year. Now, I know that you all saw that we are publishing for a 2 mil increase, but our hope is, first of all, you do that to protect yourself. Secondly, we are hoping to get that down again and make it a third year in a row of our county not asking for more taxes. What we do have going on in this county, and every other county in this state, is a thing called use value appraisal on ag land. That means that that piece of land that I farm gets taxed on the value of the commodity coming off of it. And you all know, all our commodity prices have been really low the last several years. And so our ag land appraisal value has went down as well. What happens then is it shifts. Whether you want it to or not, it's going to shift to people in the cities on your pickups, and it also shifts to people on the farm because we have a section of that farm that is labeled residential. So we're all paying for that at a higher rate in the residential area. All righty, let's move on. Had a lot of conversations with a lot of people over the years. Probably one of the best things that I've had to do is go out and view roads, look at problems, talk to people about what's going on. And the one thing that I hear a lot of is that we as commissioners need to be commissioners for the entire county, not just for our section, our area. We need to be responsible with our spending. And the thing I have noticed in the last several months is the amount of claims coming through on the vouchers are smaller, and we are working on getting those kinds of things happening. They want good roads. They want emergency people to work with it. Challenges. What do I see as challenges? Yeah, we're always going to have another road that needs fixed. We're going to have a problem with an ambulance going down at EMS. We're going to have a problem at the landfill. But the two problems that I see that are your biggest issues are declining populations and regulations of energy companies that are coming in to our area and needing. What we need to do is get there before they arrive and put in our feelings on how we want them to enter our county and work from there. My family chose to live here. They are still here. We will keep working to do community service and those kinds of things for you. So with that in mind, I know that Caleb is getting ready to come up here and pull me off the stage. So it's time for you folks to ask your questions and go from there.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Terry has informed me he's going to remain seated for this portion, so Doug is willing to take questions, I assume? Yep. And we'll start in the crowd. So before you answer or ask your question, I got to pass this little thing around to you so we pick it up on the live stream. So any questions for Doug?
Doug, is there a better way of collecting taxes rather than all of us see the names in the paper every year that go unpaid, you know? And I'm sure they pay up eventually, but that's a lot of revenue that you're missing out on that you're not getting till a later date. Is there a better way of doing that or collecting it?
At the present time, that is the way that the state allows us to do it. And so if you choose not to pay your taxes, that's fine. But about 3 years from that date, we will have and publishing your name that many times in the paper, we will have a tax collection sale and sell that piece of property for the taxes. And so that's just the way it's done. I can't go any further than that. That's just the way it is.
Any others?
Is Terry going to answer any questions? Sure. I got one for Terry, if he's willing to take one.
You can ask all the questions you want, I'm not sure I got the answer.
No, Terry, I had a lot of the same issues that you did with roads department. The commissioners got to know me very well over a 3-year period. I sat in a lot of meetings with you. You know, my concern, I spent 3.5 years trying to get just a few loads of material down our road and was unsuccessful. Doug Zilliger is the only one to even ever come out and even look at my road and what we needed. It was so unsafe. My wife and I couldn't even get to town if we had any rain, any snow, none of that. So I ended up spending $4,000 of my own money to put gravel on the county road. The meetings that I sat in with you, I know your concern is the Logan Road, and that south one especially that goes by your place. Go ahead.
Let me interrupt you a minute.
Okay.
I didn't run, I'm not running to pick that
Okay, that's kind of,
That one is there, but I want to keep it. I've been going to a lot of commissioners meetings.
right,
I am not running just to keep that road open. I'm for the district.
right. Nope, that's what I wanted to know, because I tell you, the biggest concern is if you want to spend $6 million on that road, the county doesn't have it. And so that's a concern for me. So,
Any others? Yes, sir.
I think one of the biggest problems with property taxes in this area, and probably even statewide, is the methodology of appraising the real estate, houses and business offices and plants and et cetera. The question is, there's been a lot of rumors that the state comes in and pretty well is trying to dictate what they should be, and there's a lot of confusion as to what they're using for the reference point on the value of the houses especially, but other property also. I didn't know if the commissioners had gotten any feedback on that at all.
Well, yes, the appraiser is responsible for getting that material together, and they do go to schools, and they do get analysis put together. We're working on that right now that shows what different classes of homes, property, that kind of stuff in Phillips County is. And they got, a lot of times it's hard to find a comparable sale on a commercial piece of property. But houses are a little different ballgame. And the one thing that I have heard, and I know is true, is that we got people moving in from out of state, and when they come in, they don't know what our market is. But they do know that they have X number of dollars in their pocket, and they will use that to get the home they want at whatever that cost may be. And so we have seen our houses escalate in price because of that demand that's there. I know Mr. Dibble started working on trying to get some houses built to kind of try and alleviate that problem and get it slowed down. But at the current time, that's the system we're working under. And I'll be right honest with you. When Mr. Dibble was on the board with me, we did get reprimanded because our prices were low, because Alan Hale did his work in a manner to keep it just above the low line. And he screwed up one year. And so, yes, we're catching up, but we're trying to still follow his thought process, his rules. The commissioner's only responsibility is to hire an appraiser. We cannot go in and tell her that she needs to set this appraisal value on this piece of land. That's just not our job. We haven't been trained. We don't know how to do it. But that's kind of how the appraisal process works. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm looking more at the state level when they come in and criticize what are they using for their reference points versus what we're doing locally.
Anything that we turn in, and right now, Wendy's in that, or Whitney is in that situation. It's called an analysis. And they ask for comparative studies and what you have. They ask for actual values of products or houses or whatever we're going to say. That all goes to the state. And they look over to see whether her methodology in working with those numbers was correct. And if it was, then we're off and running. If it wasn't, then we got a problem, which we had 2 years ago. Thank you.
Terry, anything you wanted to weigh in on that? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Doug, for participating and taking questions. Everybody please give them a round of applause. Okay, next we will move into our candidates for the representative seat for the 110th District. We're going to start with Marvin Matchett, if that is all right with you. Marvin is from Norton, and I guess I'll quit introducing him so he can introduce himself. So thank you, Marvin.
Before I get into the conversation about the 110th District House of Representatives, Mr. Miller, I want to interject a little bit about your question. Being a 6-year commissioner, I'm pretty familiar in serving on some state boards. The only thing that local government has the privilege to do with appraisers is to pay them. The formulas and everything that appraisers are doing is set by the state. They're just trying to follow the state's formula. And as Doug indicated, if they don't adhere to the formula, there's a standard there, then they'll get a reprimand, which is what happened 2 years ago here in Phillips County. But as far as, and I'll get into this a little further when I talk to you, but as far as appraisers, it's up to the state, because our appraisers aren't making the formula, they're following the formula. So if it's going to change, it's going to have to change at the state level, and I wish they'd pay their own employees and we wouldn't have to. My name is Marvin Matchett. I'm from Norton, Kansas. I've been a commissioner there for 6 years. I've lived in Norton for 25 years. Prior to that, I was in Oberlin for 5 years, and I was on the city council in Oberlin for 2 years. I serve on some state boards fighting for rural Kansas. I'm a current board of directors of the Kansas Association of Counties. Every entity of local government in the counties is represented, with the exception of treasurer, in this group. And each entity has a representative on the board. So appraisers, EMS, sheriffs, register of deeds, treasurer, every entity, commissioners. I represent the 17 counties of Northwest Kansas on this board, and what our objective is to fight for local government, to make sure that legislators are being fair with their decisions to what is important for local government. I also am president of the Kansas Legislative Group, Policy Group, which is comprised of 33 counties, commissioners, all of western Kansas. And our policy is to lobby for rural Kansas and to lobby for rural local government, to make sure, again, what's happening with the legislature is conducive, what's good for rural Kansas and rural local government. So I've been fighting from this side of the state for rural Kansas, and I've been fighting from Salina West for local government as well. I would like to take this fight to the state level. I would like to be on the floor and let them know when something comes up with the legislature, how it affects rural Kansas, how it affects local government in rural Kansas, and you as constituents of rural Kansas. How does it affect you? In 6 years as a commissioner, I've not been approached by a representative or senator and said, Marvin, we've got this before on the floor. How does this affect rural Kansas? How does this affect Norton and your constituents in Kansas? So I think there's a bit of confusion what's happening right now at the Capitol. Are you representing Topeka, or are you representing the district? Are you representing rural Kansas? My goal is to represent the people of rural Kansas. Now, I'm not naive enough to think I'm going to win battles against Sedgwick County, Johnson County, Douglas County, the big five. But I promise you, as your legislator, as your representative, when something comes to the floor, they're going to know how it affects us. If something comes to the floor that affects our appraisers, I'm going to call 5 appraisers in the 5 counties that we represent and say, hey, how does this affect you? What changes would you like to see in your county? I will have a communication. Now, with that said, they haven't approached me, but over the years, I've had several opportunities to approach them. They know me. I've written several letters to the governor. I've met with Representative Rogers, Senator Billinger, several of the heads of states of the local government on different issues, and let them know how it affects rural Kansas and rural local government. But to be able to do that from the floor, to constantly remind them of how it affects us, it could have an impact. I would hope that it has an impact. They started something 2 years ago. I told you I'd keep it under an hour or two, Mr. Miller. They started something 2 years ago called the Local Government Caucus. What the local government caucus is a group of legislators, senators and representatives who have all served in local government. They get it. They know. And I want to be very active with that group. Another one that I want to be very active with is Representative Smith in Wallace County. He represents that district there. He's had some great proposals to the floor on property tax relief. He's only gotten one to the floor. Committee has tossed out his other efforts, and the first thing they did is they just shredded his proposal. I think that's been the number one topic that's been expressed to our legislators over the last 3 years is property tax relief. And the biggest question is, why are we in such a bind in property tax? Why are our property taxes so high? First off, legislators will tell you because local government's overspending. That's coming from a body whose 2027 budget that they just passed, expenditures exceed their income by over $400 million. But we overspend on the local level. It's kind of the old saying, do as I say, not as I do. Some of the things that's gone wrong in the state level that's created property tax deficiencies is they've breached contracts, they've broken promises. We have over $1.5 billion statewide for things that are mandated by the state for local governments to do, but not giving any relief and funding to do the job. Now, we're doing their job, and we're doing what they tell us we need to do, but they're not giving us any funding for that. There's some area there where we could easily correct. There's a special city-county revenue sharing that was established in 1978. The locals let the state collect cigarette tax, liquor extended tax, and domestic insurance privilege. And they were supposed to return a portion of that money to the local government, and they broke that promise in 2001, and it's cost local government across the state $1.5 billion. Special city-county highway fund was not paid since 2001. That's the motor vehicle taxes that they collect. The county collects it for them. It's sent to them. There's supposed to be a return to them. That hasn't happened. It's cost over $5 million to local government by not getting those funds returned. The casino revenue. Did you know that in the statutes, in the state statutes on casinos, that they say they are allowed, it doesn't take any special measures or statutes or anything, they're allowed to share that money for property tax relief. It specifically states that for property tax relief. You know how much they've returned so far in casino funding for property tax relief? Zero. Am I running out of time here? Because I can go another hour. Basically what I'm saying is the state has cost us billions of dollars across the state and local government for property tax relief. One other quick one, exemptions. I have from Norton County. Tax exemption property in 2025 over $63,000. That's almost a full mill. In tax exemptions, that's that stuff that the state says you no longer have to pay tax off anymore. For example, a year ago they passed a statute that says no taxes on recreational. No taxes on boats, no taxes on trailers, no taxes on side-by-sides, UTV. You know what? I own a boat, I own a trailer, and I own a side-by-side. I should be celebrating this. But the fact is, everybody in this county that owns a boat, trailer, or UTV, or ATV, or side-by-side is not paying taxes on that, and that's costly to our economy. That drives up, that's money that we had coming in, they took away, and then said, we're spending too much, when they've taken $63,000 right off the top of our budget. Right off the top. Exemptions is one of the big things. Unfunded mandates, I'd love to talk longer and talk about that, but Caleb says I'm done. I would love to talk to you about unfunded mandates. That costs local government, cities and counties, millions of dollars. 57% of a county's budget is unfunded mandates from the state. That was done on a survey taken from the clerks, from their monies, from their accounting, what they pay on these different services that the state does not give any effort to help with, although they require it for local government. We've got a lot of work to do, whether it's me, Max, or Cody. I think we're all on pretty much the same page. And we've got a lot of work to do to get our government in the right direction. One of the good things is there's going to be a lot of turnover in our legislatures this year. There's going to be a new governor. It opens doors for opportunity. I would accept the challenge, and I would appreciate the challenge of being your representative to try and make change for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin, appreciate it. Next, we'll have Cody, and then we'll follow with Max, and I promise I'll be fair to you guys on timing, so don't worry about that.
No need for me. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the Republican Committee for hosting this event. Thank you all for coming out. I know it's a busy time of year with Fair Rodeo going on and getting out in this heat that's been going on. I'm Cody Ward. I'm running for the Kansas State House of Representatives, District 110. I'm born and raised here in Phillips County. I've been here pretty much my whole life. I've been working for KDOT for the last 25 years. Have 30 years total public service about. So while I'm running for this is a way for me to continue being a public servant and serving the collective good of my community and basically the communities of the District 110 and the people of the District 110. What would I look like as a legislator? I'd be open, honest, trustworthy, transparent, and accountable. I'd also want to be collaborative because I represent you. I need to know your views. I need to know what you're thinking because if I don't hear from you and know even if you disagree with me, I need to know that because I would want to represent you, not myself. I'm not representing myself. I'm representing the majority. So one other thing that I think I'd bring to this position is with being in state service for the last 25 years, I kind of know the bureaucracy, know the frustrations you guys have when you have questions or concerns, reach out to an agency, can't get any answers. Well, that's where I'd like to step in, help navigate you through that. We'll find the right person to talk to. You'll get your answers to your questions. You might not like your answers, but we'll get one. So, and then traveling around the district, I've knocked on quite a few doors. The number one issue is property tax. And I think what we need to do is lower that tax burden for us. But my priority would be lowering that tax burden, but making sure we don't strip the county or the local entities of their ability to provide the essential services that we all need and want out here. We also have other issues with agriculture issues. We have water, we have education, housing. In those issues, I'm an expert in exactly 0 of them. So what I would need to do is consult with the local folks who are experts in those things, pick their brain, get their knowledge, run solutions by them, see why or why not it wouldn't work. Then combine that with my own knowledge and my own research and make the best decision for the people in the communities of District 110. When I'm making that, one of my priorities would be to be fiscally responsible as well as trying to keep the decision-making at the lowest possible level of government. Because I believe that the best decisions made are nearest to the people because that's who can hold them accountable. So, in closing, I can't make no grand promises or guaranteed results, but I can make this promise. I would approach this with every effort I got. I'd approach this like I've approached my job for the last 30 years. I'd work diligently, and when I went to make a decision, I'd make the decision. My first question I'd ask, is this appropriate for the people and the communities? Is this the right thing for District 110? Not, is it the right thing for me? Not, is it the right thing for special interests who don't have an invested interest in our communities? Is it the correct thing for District 110? So that's what I came to say. That's what I appreciate you all coming out, and I'll stick around if you have any questions afterwards. So thanks a lot.
you, Cody, appreciate it. And then last to go for this round will be Max Dibble, and then following we'll have all three candidates for the 110th come up, and we'll do Q&A.
Thank you. Again, thank the Republican Committee, all the members and stuff for having this. This is an excellent turnout. I'm glad to see people get involved. Anyway, I'm Max Dibble, running as a Republican candidate for Kansas House of Representatives, District 110, because I want to make sure that we have a voice in Topeka for Northwest Kansas and all of Kansas. I am pro-life, support the Second Amendment, and I've been endorsed by the Kansas for Life, which is a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to protecting and defending the right of all innocent human life from the moment of conception to natural death. So I feel very proud to have their endorsement for that. The entire state needs to address the issues of rising property tax. Same thing. I've been to 18 cities, 5 counties, had to buy a new belt, had to buy new shoes, but it's worth it. The people there have issues. Went to Clayton first. Not very many people in Clayton. They have a terrible problem with their municipal water system. Visited with them, took down names, called KDHE. Of course, we got one that's from here that's pretty easy to get a hold of, Dan Wells. Next day he called them. I don't know what they've got done, but they had issues, and we're trying to get it resolved for them. An area that I'll work with is to find a solution. I'm going to go through a few things on the tax issues that we've got. But the other areas of interest that I want to try to get involved with in Topeka is appropriations, budget, transportation, water, and agriculture. In fact, I will be attending the governor's local consult on water in Hayes tomorrow morning. They've got a 3-hour local consult there that they go around and do. Without water, we have nothing. So I'll continue to work with other representatives on our water issues in Kansas. I've been attending state water meetings ever since Governor Brownback. If that kind of dates some of you, I'm sorry. But he tried to get a 50-year water plan, and they would never fund it for him. Well, as of now, Jim Minix from Scott City is the chairman of the water group, water plan, and they've allocated over $55 million to try to analyze and come up with a recommendation. And this is some of the things they'll talk about there in Hayes tomorrow. All right, some proposed legislation to eliminate property tax in Kansas. I don't know if you're familiar, Senate Bill 488 is one that was put out, was to totally eliminate property tax. Well, the other issue you got there, if you eliminate property tax, you don't need an appraiser. So that could be an issue. Okay, this is a bill that's, they want to talk about it as a transaction fee. It's actually a sales tax, but in the actual bill, they call it a Kansas Fair Share Purchase Surcharge. Imagine putting that in the bill. Okay, this bill would allow a $1.60 surcharge on every purchase of $20 or more, and on purchase of less than $20, it would be assessed at 7.6% of the purchase. Now, to go through all that and look at all the ones across the entire state to show you why this is not a workable situation, Burlington, if you're familiar with it in Coffee County, they would essentially have to have a 40.7 sales tax, transaction fee, whatever you want to call it. So every time you go to buy something, you know, you're going to pay an extra almost 41% in transaction fees. There's only 2 states in the United States, Hawaii and Florida, are the only ones that are able to eliminate property tax because their sales tax from income is enough that they can do it. But none others are even close to that. Okay, I've served for 12 years as county commissioner, enjoyed all 12 years. Served on Kansas Association of Counties as a board member in Topeka for 10 years. Was president of KAC for 2 years. Also a Kansas County Commissioner Association board member, and that was for 6 years. While serving as the Kansas Association of Counties board, we did all the training conferences for all 105 counties, for all departments in the in the courthouses. So I've got a lot of contacts in the House and Senate and across the entire state. I have some very good friends from Johnson County. Johnson County, 660,000 people plus right now. Ed Eilert, he's probably retired now. He was the chairman there, but became real good friends. He's got over in Park, he's got a big ballroom there named after him. And anyway, I've dealt with him. Wallace County, 1,400 people. We're out by the Colorado border. And that's the part where Adam Smith is from. The needs of Wallace County and Phillips County are a lot different than Johnson County. However, I've shown that I can work with the largest counties in Kansas to the smallest and come up with workable solutions. Johnson County has 35 House representatives in their county. So, when I get to Topeka and represent you, I'll be representing 5 counties out here. I was a member of the KDOT task force for 2 years, traveling all across Kansas, and created the 10-year KDOT program called the IKE, which is the Eisenhower Transportation Program. We're 5 years into the plan right now. This was $10 billion with a B investment in infrastructure. Part of the reason that was able to continue was before that program, they were robbing the bank of KDOT. The statute said they could pull money out of KDOT's funds, use it for anything they wanted to, so our roads were becoming pretty horrible. So Governor Kelly and Julie Lorenz, who was the secretary at that time, they got that shut down, so there's no more robbing the bank of KDOT. There's also, in addition to the T-Works projects that were to be completed, included the Highway 383 up on from Alma to Norton. They've done the east part, they've done the west part, but they've still got the middle section from Almena back east, and that's about a $50 million. They're going to let it here before too long. So KDOT has already spent $80 million on that 383 roadway up there, and it's nice. It needed it. I'm a lifelong resident of Kansas, born and raised in Woodston, Kansas, and Rooks County. Graduated from Woodston Rural High School. Nothing there anymore but a sign. Attended Fort Hays State University. Got my Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics, Master's degree in Mathematics. The Kansas House of Representatives District 110 includes all of Norton, Phillips, Graham, Rooks, and Ellis County, except for the city of Hays and Victoria. Barb Wassinger has the 111th district, which is those 2 cities. I am your choice for House of Representatives District 110 with experience, dedicated to hard work, showing up at the Capitol every day for when they're in session and for committee meetings. So I would like to ask for your support and vote on August 4th to allow me to be on the general ballot on November 3rd and then on to Topeka as your District 110 representative in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. So now at this time, we will do Q&A for the members of the 110th, or for the candidates for 110th, I should say. So please ask your question and then give me a little bit to relay this back to the candidate.
One of the questions I had, and Commissioner Manchin, you almost got there, that unfunded mandates related to school funding. So when we look at our school funding at the state level, I think it takes up over 50% of the state budget. I don't know the exact number. I hope that's close. I know when I've asked Senator Billinger about school funding, he notes that we always have a significant increase to school funding at the state level because I think the law that was in place was a 3% increase every year. This year, they're working on restructuring the formula for school funding, and there's a lot of discussion about vouchers. And I know we often think in rural areas, vouchers won't impact our small schools because we don't have very many private schools. But there's about 70 virtual schools in the state of Kansas that a lot of our students are leaving our physical brick and mortar schools to go to those virtual schools. So I was hoping to hear each of you talk about your stance on school funding. And also, our rural communities and our rural schools are impacted significantly by special ed funding. Because we're underfunded by special education at the state level, it significantly impacts the amount of money that school districts have to pay to cover special ed funding that's being taken away from other students. So I'm wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about your stance there or your knowledge related to school funding.
Who'd like to take a crack at that first?
Okay, when I first got out of college, I took a job in Kensington, Kansas, taught there for 12 years. Was very proud to be there. It was a nice school. You know, my first year there, I made a whole $6,200. So hopefully some of the teachers' salaries have gotten better than that. I've got some that are still teaching. During the walking around, I did take time and I went to every superintendent's office and they had questions on special ed. The only one was they had a superintendent coming in Hill City, so I think that one I haven't had a chance to visit with yet. And I told them if when I get to Topeka, you guys want to have a meeting out here, then set it up and I will make my schedule work so that I can be there to visit with you to learn more about particularly the special ed program, because that is a problem. So, you know, the thing that may happen, I don't know, I haven't seen any proposals yet. I mean, we've got smaller schools. I had a granddaughter that graduated in eighth grade in Brewster. There was 5 students in the 8th grade. I'm not sure how many they graduated in the high school. Talked with Mike Gower a little bit. I think maybe, hopefully I'm close. I think he said they graduated 43 out here this year. And there are 20 kindergartners coming in. Now, I haven't seen any numbers on vouchers, or we do have several at-home schoolings, you know, which I guess that's their option. You don't get the social skills, so I'm not sure I would be too much in favor of that, paying them to do that. But anyway, I am committed to help that, because as a teacher for 12 years, you know, I'm aware of some of the things that are going on. But keep us informed, because that's the information we need to use. Don't know if that helps.
Appreciate your question. It's one of those areas where I'm not an expert, and I'll admit that. But it's also one of those areas where I will reach out to those superintendents and to teachers and find out their opinions. I've had some discussions with the superintendent in Norton on education. One of the problems, and it doesn't address the financial part, but one of the problems that we have in our schooling systems, not so much in rural Kansas, but we've integrated a woke society into our schools, and we're paying more attention to that than we are education. And that becomes a problem. That's why we have more students at home, private schools, and those type of things. We need to fix that part of the education. As far as the funding for the education, it is important, the special education, but we need to assess how our students are doing in school, as well as the education part. I think one of the issues that we have with our education is our pay for teachers is substandard in the state of Kansas. That I do know. You compare, we lose a lot of teachers to Oklahoma, Missouri, and those surrounding states, because we do have a substandard pay scale for our teachers. We need to do something to increase and to make it more profitable for them. They have the heart. Our teachers have the heart. I don't question that at all. But they still have to be able to provide for their families and their own children. And so I think the legislature needs to look at what they can do to help subsidize that portion of our education.
School vouchers, I agree with it in principle. I'm all for parental rights. Schools out here are the heartbeat of our community. So if we did go school vouchers, we got to find a way to hold harmless the rural areas so we don't lose our schools. We lose our schools, we lose our towns. Special education. Statutorily, we're supposed to pay 92% of excess cost. We aren't meeting that currently. What I think we ought to do is we ought to have fair, equitable, and predictable special education funding, whether it meets that 92% or what's determined in the new formula plan that they come up with. We need to keep our rule weightings, because if we don't, we can't afford education out here. So that's where I stand on education. So thank you.
I might give you a little more information. Oh. Hello?
Shut it off so you can't talk.
Oh, there? That better? Okay. Anyway, one thing that's been kicked around, because in rural Kansas, I've always been opposed to consolidation. But, you know, things happen. I know some schools down in Ness County and different ones down there where they, you know, they have a lot of oil. So money's not, they could care less about the state, you know, supporting them. So what some of them did was they went so far that they had less than 2 or 3 students in the whole school, and they finally did have to, but money was not the issue. The thing that's being kicked around right now is that, okay, maybe, certainly don't want to go to one school in the county. That's too many miles. The other is have one superintendent per county, which that's going to make the superintendents irate probably, but then have your principals in the buildings. But it's kind of a stopgap thing before, you know, consolidation on it. So I'm not sure where that's at. I don't think there's any bill out there or anything on it yet, but just throw that out there so you can kind of keep a watch for it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go back here and then I'll come up here.
So, gentlemen, I'm curious to know if the question came up in a legislative session for whether you would consider the school giving permission to have cell phones in the classroom or deny cell phones in the classroom during class session. I just recently heard on the news today that there's a couple of states that are working on saying that no more cell phones in the classroom. I'm curious to know how might you represent the constituents if you had to argue that in the legislative session. Would you be for or against?
Kansas made that designation last year, and went into effect, I believe, July 1st. Is our teacher in here? July 1st. And the designation is that there are no more cell phones allowed turned on within the school. I know Norton has some implementation of plans for that. If you're caught with your cell phone the first time, they're going to take it away, give it back. If you're caught for the second time, they're going to take it away. Your parents have to come and get it, like that. But it's already been decided in Kansas, no cell phones. If I were a legislator last year when that decision, by the way, I was at the Capitol, and I was watching the legislators discuss this bill before it was decided. And my stand on it, I do personally believe the kids don't need their phones in the school. But I also believe it's not the state's decision to make. It's the decision should, again, home rule. We need to have the power within ourselves to make those decisions individually. We don't need that dictation from the state for the whole state to say, this is how it's going to happen, and this is what we insist be done. Again, I would be in favor, if I was voting on it on a local level, no phones in Norton at the school, but I don't believe it should have been made at the state level.
I don't think I have anything to add. I pretty much agree with his response, and so I would probably fall into that same category.
Okay, back when I was teaching, we had slide rules. But then they went to calculators. You know, and I totally agree, you know, that decision should be made at the local level. As a good example, the legislature in July 1, I believe it is, there was 122 new laws that went into effect. How many of you know what they are? I don't. We're spending time down there doing things like that instead of taking care of spatial ed, instead of taking care of property tax. You know, we've got things to do down there, and then when they do decide to package everything together, so a lot of these are just, you know, add-ons to a particular bill. Which again, the only one that I know of, and again, I'll bring Adam Smith's name up from Wallace County. He put through a bill 2 or 3 years ago that said, hey, we do not want our grader operators to have a CDL. Makes no sense. It went through as a clean bill. There was nothing added to it. Went through unanimously. Got it taken care of. That way you're not worried about 10 different things in a bill. Well, I don't like this, but I like this, but I'll accept this. You know, if you've got an issue, take that issue and vote on it. Bring up the pros and cons, let people, you know, visit with you. But, you know, some of that, so again, I totally agree. That should have not been done at the state level. Again, Johnson County, I'll bring it up, Sedgwick County, their school districts are totally different than Phillipsburg or Norton. So just throw those bills out and let them handle it locally. So thank you.
My question kind of has two parts to it. With the ALAC laws that we have, we're good with that. Okay, so American laws for American courts, or basically, I don't think we have an issue with this right here, but that doesn't say we won't in 5 years. But that, because we are kind of going back to the property tax, when we have these properties selling for the amounts that they're selling for, and we're raising the property tax, and places like Blackwater come in to buy up some of these places, or we have foreign governments that come in and buy up our land, and they're trying to farm our lands into big farms where the local farmers are not making the money they need to be making or could have been making years ago. My question with this is, by enacting this ALAC, we are saying basically we're not going to let the foreign policies come in and their laws take over our laws. It also is saying that things like Sharia law are not going to become enacted, but we have to, I know Kansas is one of the few states that has already enacted the ALAC laws, but that doesn't mean that they do that at our local levels. And I'm wondering if you guys can tell me if that is on, if that is something that you guys are familiar with or can look into that and tell me if that's something that will be covered at our levels, even though it is a statewide thing. We've known before that sometimes things like this get passed and we don't know those 120 laws that went into effect. Is this something where we can know, should something come down and people start buying up Phillips County land, that we're going to be protected from outside countries or outside populations coming in and ruling over our children and our futures?
I'm not highly knowledgeable on the ALAC, but it's something I would look into. I know that they have passed policies that like doesn't allow foreign entities to buy land around military bases. That is currently in law, but as far as this ALAC, I just am not knowledgeable enough to speak on it.
It has been before the legislature. They haven't made a decision on it. We need to protect our land from foreign investment. There's a consolidation, there's that C word again, going on in agriculture, and we're losing a lot of the small farms. But that consolidation needs to be done within the community so that our local farmers can grow, as opposed to having that. It's just another way for China to have control. That's the fact. And that's what they want to do. If they can get enough of our land, then they've got control of that land. And so I would hope that as the legislature discusses it, that they're able to come up with a conclusion and something that they can agree on that would give limitations, if not eliminate, the opportunity for foreign entities to purchase land in Kansas. And I would certainly be in favor and fight for that myself if I was there.
Mine doesn't directly affect that because, again, I need to do some research to see what's there. But just for a little bit of history, I don't know if everybody's aware, in the year 1900, Phillips County had 14,400 people living here in the county. We've got different townships right now. We've got 25 townships out there, and we've got some that nobody even lives in. Our current population in Phillips County right now is 4,981 people. So you talk about a drastic decline. Now, maybe you need to blame that on some of the husband and wives, because back when I grew up in a family of 6, a lot of families had 8 kids. That's how they got their farm work done. So, and there was a house on every quarter. Now, trying to reverse that trend is a real issue. The other issue is, it's associated a little bit with that, is right now, the average new home buyer used to be a lot younger. The average new home buyer right now is age 42 because the younger ones can't afford to buy new stuff. So, and that all relates back to land and taxes and everything else. But it's a good point. Glad you brought that up.
Other questions?
So my question's kind of going back to the property tax thing. Kansas is a declining population. It's also an aging population. And as the older generation dies off, we're still dealing with inflation, which means that the younger population is going to have to take up that burden, which in my mind begs the question, exactly how are we going to reduce property tax? Because that's an easy thing to say, but promises are easy to make, they're not so easy to keep. And I guess the next question is your statement. You said that there was a lot of other people coming in. Is that helping or hurting the population? As in, are they younger people moving in? Are they older people moving in? How does that change the demographic?
I was hoping somebody would ask that question, particularly on property tax. By the way, my opinion is it's older people retiring that's coming in. There's younger ones too, but I think the majority of them that are coming in are people who are selling their $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 home and seeing a $100,000 home listed for $300,000, and they think they're getting a steal, and that's what's causing the valuation problem. As far as property tax, how do we do it? How do we keep it from happening? It has to come from the state level. And how we do that is finding a revenue stream that can be dedicated to property tax. Property tax lids don't work. I know it's attractive. Freeze our property tax lid at 3%. And if you're paying 10 and 15%, or Marion County 30% higher property taxes one year to the next, that 3% looks pretty attractive. But the reality of that, if you're freezing that at 3%, the people that are under that threshold, which by the way are your elderly and your poor, theirs has to come up, and we're driving them out of their homes. And the shortfall between the two, we have two choices in local government. One choice is the mill levy. Okay, we'll raise the mill levy. The second choice is cut services. Buy less gravel for our roads, I don't think that's very attractive. Not have 24-hour law enforcement, I don't think that's very attractive. Where are we gonna cut? So the answer to property tax is through the state. Finding a fund, a new fund, something that they're not gonna spend the money they already have. I mean, they're already a shortfall of $400,000, although they got $2.5 billion from during COVID. But at $400 million a year, that's going to erase pretty quickly. So you got to find a new source for property tax. Some of the ideas is that cigarette tax that they took away from us. Why not hold your ground and get that cigarette tax and use that towards property tax? And it's guaranteed to be used for property tax. If you don't use it, the local government doesn't use it for property tax, they don't get it. One of my ideas, we all get gas. Diesel, unleaded, ethanol. And when we go in and we put that pump in the car and we squeeze it and we look and we see $3.50 a gallon, we're not thinking, well, how much of that is tax? We're thinking $3.50 a gallon. So we're paying road taxes every time we fill up. Whether it's our implements, whether it's our vehicles, whether it's our 18-wheelers, we're paying a road tax every time we fill up. You know who's not paying road taxes? Electric vehicles. They're getting a free ride on our roads. What if we had a fund where we would charge the wattage of outcome on those charging stations in the state of Kansas, and they would be paying not more, but they would be joining the rest of us in paying their road tax. But the difference is, that is a new tax coming to the state, and we can dedicate that tax to property tax relief. Now you have true relief because you have generated a fund that is absolutely dedicated to property tax, which brings your property tax dollars down from that funding. And there's standards that the local governments would have to meet to accept that funding. There's a Representative Smith, you've referenced him a couple of times. He had an equation for distribution of a $60 million sludge fund for property tax relief, which was destroyed when it hit the floor. But his distribution was 20% equally to the 105 counties. Every 105 counties gets 20% of that funding. The rest of that 80%, 40% of it came off from property tax or property valuations, and 40% to population. So what that means, yes, Johnson County is going to get a whole lot more money than Phillips County, but per capita with that formula, that one person in Johnson County gets the same amount of relief in their property tax as you do in Phillips County. It's a very fair formula. So if we could find the funding from the state, new funding from the state, utilize a formula like that, then your property taxes would come down.
This one? Okay, not to dispute, Marvin, but I believe that when they go in and buy your tag for an electric vehicle, there's a charge, and they just upped it this last legislation, I think, but I didn't review that. So they are paying some. And of course, when you buy gas and that, 24 cents of that goes to KDOT to help take care of the roads. So yeah, that's funding that's out there. The other part, and I'm not sure where any of that's going to go, but Adam Smith has worked, but we had I don't know if any of you are familiar with LAVTR, Local Ad Valorem Tax Relief, which we did have. I think Marvin might have alluded to that a little bit earlier. But the big players in that would be Johnson County, Sedgwick County, Douglas, Wyandotte, and all of them. It would have amounted to about $300,000 for Phillips County when we were talking about it. But again, that's several mills that we could get. But the legislature killed that. Even though the bill was there that they would pay that, they never did fund it. So the last 2 years ago, I think it was, they actually killed the bill that said they was no longer fund that. You know, the other thing that comes up, and again, I referenced Johnson County, volume spells money. Because when 2 years ago, the Johnson County built a brand new, I don't know, 10, 12, 15-story new courthouse, $70 million. They put a 1/4% sales tax on for 7 years. They actually paid that off in 5 years and took that 1/4% off. So when you have that number of people, you know, it makes a big difference than what we've got out here. So anyway, just a couple little side notes there.
I agree with you. Property taxes going up. We got less people to cover the same services. It's a death spiral. We got to figure out something to do. What they brought up was finding the revenue from the state. We used to take 3.6% of the sales tax, send it back to the locals. We need to find something like that. We need to do that and cut some spending in the state, and we can find that. We just got to be a little conservative with what we're spending on, while not cutting our essential services. Back to that, if we're going to send money back to the locals, we got to make this where they're being fiscally responsible, because the last thing we want to do is send them money and then let them grow their government on top of that. So also, these are great ideas, but we're one person of 125 representatives. There's 40 senators, one governor. There's going to be 1 million ideas out there. We need to put everything on the table, pick and choose, see if we can come up with the best idea. Look at what other states have done. Let's keep an open mind to what we can get done, and together let's find it. We've got to pass something, because if we don't get tax relief, we're just going to keep losing people. That's all I got.
I think the discussion, Max, was new revenue. And if we were to charge for the wattage at the charging stations, which isn't being done, that would be new revenue to go towards property tax relief. Let me share some other numbers with you. Kansas Lottery Act brings in $88 million a year annually. The Kansas Expanded Lottery brings in $117 million. The Kansas Cigarette Tobacco Act brings in $105 million. The liquor enforcement tax brings in $84 million. The liquor by the drink tax brings in almost $61 million. And you know what? The statutes are clear on every one of those taxes that they can use that. It doesn't take any statutory work. It can be used for property tax relief. And that's what I say. The state is where it begins in property tax relief. We have to have funding coming down from the capital to local governments to lower your property tax.
Is there anybody else? We have a second question, so I want to make sure everybody else is getting a chance too. We'll get back to you.
My question is over renewable energy. So renewable energy and transmission lines build out has really been growing in our state. So I'm curious what your views are on the future of energy in Kansas, especially when it comes to landowner rights, cost allocation of those transmission lines, and possible benefit to Kansas for energy that's exported out of state.
As far as this, transmission lines, they should only be able to use eminent domain if it can be proven that it's for the citizens of this state and it's absolutely needed. If it is, their footprint they should have to do a study that shows what their footprint is and did everything to minimize that footprint. No landowner should have to divide their land just because it's profitable for a company. The landowner shouldn't bear that brunt, and everything should be done only if it's going to benefit the citizens of this state.
I am so proud of Kansas because we went through an effort of land grab, 4, 5 years ago? And Kansas did a due diligence and worked hard and came together to fight against that land grab. And that was part of the land grab. And we stood up for our land. And I believe we will continue to do that. I think one of the things that we need to be very concerned about is protecting our land. And I'm talking about solar, wind, data centers, as well as battery storage. We need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. Now, I got to believe this younger generation, they're very much in favor of data centers. The AI is very important to them, and that's fine, but we need to have a safe way of doing these things. We need to make sure that, one, our roads are protected when they come in to work and build these items within our counties. I know there's a lot of letters going out in Norton County to farmers about solar right now. And I believe Phillips County has also received some of those letters about solar farms. Hayes has adopted a solar farm there in Ellis County. But we need to make sure we have the protections in place, so that our roads are protected, so that our ground is protected, so that if they're going to use chemicals to kill under the solar systems, and then when they're done with that, what's that going to leave for the farmer? Is our ground going to be protected? We need to make sure that when they're done, the deconstruction of that, who's responsible for that? Who's going to tear those things and take them away? I drove by the graveyards for the wind, and it's terrible in Iowa, those graveyards where they take them. Well, what if they just walked away from it because we don't have any protection on that? We need to be forward-thinking for these things, particularly in our area where we don't have a lot of it right now, to make sure that we are protecting our land and our farmers and the people that live here, that when it happens, it's done in a safe way, in a way that is allowable by our zoning. And first off, they need to be able to come to the commissioners. And that needs to be a starting point, not the last place they go when they come to talk about these different things. And a lot of them right now are going to the farmer. Our commissions has not been notified, other than the farmers that received the letters, but they haven't come to us to say what is our stand or what is our policies on that. So we just need to be forward-thinking and protect our lands.
Yeah, the thing that concerns me, because I see going by the highway, all these windmills that are they're all made out of fiberglass. They're all cut up, just wrapped in a truck. I don't know where they're going, where they're burying them, but they've got maybe a 25-year lifespan. And I'm a little scary about what that's going to look like, down the road. But I realize we do need renewable. But let me back up and go to water for just a minute. I don't know if you've kept up with the 2 reservoirs, Meade and the other one down in Nevada. Those things are only 30% full right now. And they've got to furnish water for Nevada and several, Lake Powell. Lake Powell's the other one. Both of those are devastatingly low. So, and I know I seen an article on Midwest put out the other day. I was surprised how much of their energy, now we don't have their electricity here, but other places do have, but a big share of their electricity does come from wind powers. So, I don't know, it's a concern. I'm also concerned that, we gave all that money to Panasonic to build those electric batteries down there, and now they've taken out the mandate for electric cars. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, but that was a lot of tax dollars that went into that. So, and I know looking forward, when they were doing that, they didn't anticipate that happening. You can't always outguess, what's going to happen tomorrow. So, anyway, those are definitely valid concerns, and I hate to see good corn ground, wheat ground, or whatever covered up with solar. I mean, to me, it's just not right. And so a lot of the counties are putting out a moratorium until there are safeguards to cover all these different entities. So they're putting out moratoriums that they're not going to put any data centers, no solar fields out and so forth. Now, again, I understand that the people own the land. They should be able to sell it at the highest value or whatever. But I also really want to congratulate the people that are keeping the land in the family and passing it down generation to generation. So that, to me, is important. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go over here, and then I think we got time for one more.
My question has to do with your mindset as to, you're all talking about wanting to save money on taxation, and I appreciate that and respect that. You're going to go to the legislator and you're going to fight for tax relief. Where is your mind and where is your vision of the future for the 5 counties you represent for opportunity to bring economic development, something that will generate revenue, something that will generate job opportunities for the young people? You're talking about people that are coming here that have come from other states and have brought their monies with them, but that's what they're bringing, and it is generating concerns about valuation of homes. I understand that. But really, I'd like to know, each of you, where is your mind when you go to the legislator, that you're going to look for your counties, for those 5 counties, and say, do we have opportunities, business opportunities that we can invite to set up housekeeping in these 5 counties and generate jobs and generate opportunity?
I serve on the Economic Development Board in Norton County and for the city and county. And I agree we need to generate businesses, we need to generate jobs, but 2 of the biggest deficiencies we have in rural Kansas, housing and childcare. And I think if we could address those 2 things and get them established, the rest will follow. We have the prison in Norton. We have other industries in Norton, and you have the ethanol here. The important thing is the ones that want to work there, they need to have a place to live, and they need to have childcare for their children. In Norton, we've got a development, if you haven't seen it, on the east side where we're going to add 38 housing units. And then we had the misfortune of our furniture store retiring, and they couldn't sell it, so they closed it. And we had a business in the community that bought the building and donated it to economic development. And we're turning that into a child care center that will take up to 140 children within that facility. That's a good start. That gives people, when they come to Norton, an opportunity to have a place to live and a place for their children while they work there. So I think in all of our communities here in this district, that's a good starting point in reaching out. There's opportunities out there for funding, for housing, and for child care. It's not easy, and some of it is matching funding. In other words, they give you $100,000, you put $100,000 in there, but that's still, you're going to gain $100,000. The community can come together and help to raise that money, but I think the core of it is making sure that we have housing and child care available, and then we could recruit businesses to come in.
May I ask you, on the housing, what efforts are made in order to make those houses at an affordable level to startup housing for the younger families? In other words, I hear about developments that are going on in the region, and I'm hearing in my 1 ear saying, well, yeah, they're going to build houses that start at $210,000.
Yeah.
How are you going to attract a young people,
Yeah.
like a teacher, and say you're going to try to sell them a $200,000?
Here's something that's happened. I understand what you're saying there, and you're right. You're absolutely right. In Rawlins County, they have a housing project that's been very successful. They're not developing they're doing them 1, 2 at a time. But what's happening is a lot of the people that are already there are purchasing those houses, and then their houses are coming available for the medium income people that are coming into the community. So yeah, they will be priced around that 200 margin. Now, part of that is the economic development sets the bar as to how much they can do. They set the bar as to how these are going to be constructed. I mean, they've taken a lot of work into it. There's going to be a park in there. It's going to be really nice. But I'll tell you what, we have developers standing in line to purchase our lots, to build these houses. So they must know something about it. They must know something about it. I think that within 5 years, we'll have the majority of those sold. Now, 16 of those, is it? 8 of them are duplexes, and they're age restricted or suggested age restricted for 55 and up on the duplexes.
Just a couple of things, and Caleb is very aware of the ROS program that he managed for several years. We were one of the top counties in the state. Again, the bigger counties aren't interested in that because they can draw people from anywhere. But out here, it's a 5-year program, and I think we're still involved with it. It's, what's that? They did have to cut funding? Oh, really? Anyway, it would pay up to $5,000 a year for 5 years for your college, I believe. Okay, the other thing I don't know, is everybody familiar with the Innovative Center in Norton? Scott Sproul, good friend. Randy Speaker, he came from the Department of Commerce. Moore Single sits on the board over there. Right now, if you build a house, and I think we've got 8 or 10 in the county, and you've got to notify them before you break ground, but, you know, you build this house and you live in it for 5 years, you know, initially when you start building a house, they're going to write you a check for $50,000. Okay, it's not a loan. If you live in it for 5 years, that $50,000 goes away. You don't pay it back. Now, the thing that, not really funny, but when I was in DeMar, a gentleman from there that lived in California moved back, and he's building a house. They've got a sign up, Innovative Center. He's 85 years old and building a huge house there. So we're hoping that he'll make it through the 5-year limitation that they've got for him. But he's a nice gentleman. But anyway, there are some very nice things coming out of the Innovative Center there in Norton with Scott and them. So, and you take 5 of them, I mean, that's, or not 5, you take 10 houses here in town or in the county, say even at 200,000 or whatever, that's going to increase our valuation. You know, a lot of them are going to use the NRP, which is fine, which is a reduction in your taxes over 10 years. But, you know, that's all going to help. And that would help encourage some people to move back too. Maybe we can get that median age for kids to buy a new home coming down from 42 years old. So, what's that?
What is your vision for economic development, bringing businesses to your 5 counties that you're going to represent? How people can afford a $200,000 house if they don't have a job. So where are they going to get jobs?
Well, I mean, so far, right. Well, again, local control. I'm not sure that I want to address that with the legislature. I want to address it with each county and the ones here and control what we do. So.
I can't really disagree with anything that's been said. I don't have a grand vision of, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know what type of business would go well here. One thing I think we ought to do, though, is be careful. Let's not just jump at every opportunity. Sometimes we think, great, we're going to get all these benefits, and we throw all this tax benefits at them, and then we end up getting nothing out of them. So I'm all for economic development. Do I have a grand plan? No, but I think sometimes we got to be selective on what we allow in here and what we don't. If it's good for the community, I think that's a great thing. I think workforce development, I mean, we dream of all these big factories and stuff, but let's start with the carpenters. Let's start with the HVAC people. Let's keep them here. Let's make our lives easier. So when you need your air conditioner fixed, you got somebody to call who will show up in the heat of the day. That's how we start economic development, is we start with those little things. We build on that, get so their lives is easier to live out here, and then people just it starts trickling down. Okay, so now more people want to come because we don't have all the, my air conditioner went out, well, pull out YouTube, let's figure out how to fix it. So that's my thought.
Okay, I think that's a good stopping point. We'll go ahead and cut that off. I know these guys are going to be more than willing to answer more questions. Maybe not tonight, but we still have another week till voting's over with. So I encourage everybody, please go out and vote next week. Again, thank you from the Republican Central Committee of Phillips County for coming out. We really appreciate it. This is a great turnout and probably forces us to continue doing this again. Yes, sir.
You might mention, everybody has to go to the 4-H building to vote, if you weren't aware of it.
Yes.
I don't know where the chaos is going to be. I think when they move over to 183, they're probably going to start at Amlin and come this way. So hopefully there won't be any time delays.
There's a chance they'll be at the junction of 183 and 36, though, so you may want to plan your trip accordingly.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, everybody that joined on the live stream. Have a good night.